The Queen of the Stars stood on the wide balcony of her ship and watched the blue planet turning far below. To her eyes it looked peaceful, but her heart did not believe what she saw. She had heard too many stories from her scouts about human selfishness, about how they built machines that ate forests and dried oceans. Every report fed her anger, and soon that anger became her truth. Her council waited behind her. They were quiet, afraid to speak. The Queen's voice, when it came, was calm and cold. She said that humanity could not be trusted. She said they had poisoned their own world and would soon poison others, and so she declared that her people must prepare for defense. It sounded like protection, but in her heart it felt like war. When she walked back to her private chamber, she removed her crown and looked into the mirror. The face that looked back was tired. Her dark eyes carried the weight of many years of loss. Long ago, she had watched a small colony of her kind disappear after a human mining mission had gone wrong. No one had explained what happened, and no one had said sorry. Since that day, her trust had been gone. She remembered her daughters that night. There were 7 of them, each young and full of life. The youngest 2 were still learning the ways of the stars. They often asked innocent questions about Earth. "Are humans really monsters?" one of them had asked once. The Queen had answered without thinking. She said yes. But when she saw their faces fall, she felt a strange pain inside her chest. The next morning, she called a meeting with her generals. Maps of Earth glowed before them. The cities, the oceans, the clouds, everything looked so small on the screen. One of the younger officers hesitated. He said, "My Queen, not all humans are the same. Some try to heal their world." The Queen looked at him for a long time, but her pride would not allow her to agree. She simply turned away and gave the order to move closer to the planet. Days passed. The great fleet moved through the quiet of space like a silver storm. From her command hall, the Queen watched every report. Her people admired her strength, but none of them knew how much she doubted herself. She walked the long corridors alone and listened to the hum of the engines. Sometimes she thought about the stars before the wars began, when her people still believed in peace. One night she stood by the viewing window with her oldest daughter. The girl's name was gentle and soft, and her voice was filled with care. "Mother," she said, "do we really have to fight them? You taught us that fear can build walls." The Queen did not answer at once. She looked at the girl and felt both pride and sadness. "Fear keeps us safe," she finally said. The daughter nodded, but her eyes looked away. The Queen knew that her child did not believe her. The next day, a message arrived from Earth. It came not from soldiers, but from a group of children who had found a way to send a signal into space. They spoke of peace, of dreams, of wanting to meet others among the stars. The Queen listened in silence, her hands folded tightly. The message was short, full of laughter and hope. But she convinced herself that it was a trick, a way to make her people weak. She told her guards to delete it. Still, the words stayed with her. That night, when she closed her eyes, she dreamed of a small planet full of light and music. She dreamed of children playing by the water and of 2 small hands reaching toward her. When she woke, she was trembling. She tried to shake off the dream, but it clung to her like morning mist. Her daughters, unaware of her unrest, continued their training. The youngest ones, curious and brave, often looked out the windows toward Earth. They wanted to see its green lands and blue skies. One day, they begged the Queen to let them observe the planet more closely. She refused at first, but their bright eyes softened her heart. She allowed them to travel in a small scout vessel under strict orders not to make contact. When the small craft left the ship, the Queen stood watching until it vanished into the cloud of stars. She told herself that she was not worried, but deep inside, a mother's fear began to grow. She tried to return to her duties, reading reports and giving commands, but her thoughts kept drifting back to her daughter's laughter. The hours turned into a day. Then 2. The scout vessel was supposed to send signals every 6 hours, but soon the messages stopped. The Queen ordered her technicians to check the system. They said the signal had been lost, near the upper atmosphere of Earth. A simple storm, they said, could have caused it. But she felt a coldness in her chest that no explanation could calm. Her counsel suggested waiting. They said the daughters were clever, that they would return soon. The Queen nodded, pretending to believe them. Yet every passing hour made the silence heavier. She stood again at the balcony, staring at the blue planet. It no longer looked like an enemy. It looked like a riddle she could not solve. As night fell across the earth below, she whispered to herself, "Where are you, my children?" No one heard her. No one saw the tears that slipped down her face. For all her power, for all her titles, she was still a mother afraid for her family. She returned to the command hall and called for her maps again. The image of the planet filled the air before her. She traced the location of the last signal, a small area filled with mountains and rivers. It looked harmless, ordinary, even beautiful. She wondered what her daughters saw there before the silence came. Her generals waited for her order, but she said nothing. She was lost between her duty and her love. If she sent soldiers, she might start a war. If she waited, she might lose her children forever. She walked slowly back to her throne and sat down, feeling the weight of every life she commanded. For the first time in years, she did not know what to do. She looked again at the image of Earth, turning silently in the dark. The Queen, who once believed she could judge an entire world, now saw only uncertainty. Somewhere on that small, glowing planet were two hearts she could not reach. The ship drifted quietly through space, and the Queen stayed awake long into the endless night. The stars outside blinked softly as if they were watching her. And though she did not yet understand it, the first crack had formed in the wall between her world and the world of humans. The next morning began with silence across the Queen's ship. The halls that were usually full of voices and footsteps felt strangely empty. Every officer avoided her eyes. They all knew that her daughters were still missing. The search teams had returned nothing. No signal, no message, only static through the speakers and the endless blue curve of Earth far below. The Queen tried to keep her posture calm, but worry pressed like weight on her chest. She walked through the long glass corridor and stopped before the great viewing window. Earth shone under the sunlight, its oceans glittering like gemstones. It looked peaceful, almost too peaceful. That stillness made her uneasy. Her oldest daughter entered quietly and stood beside her. "Mother," she said softly, "please rest for a while. You have not closed your eyes for 2 nights." The Queen gave a small shake of her head. "I cannot rest when I do not know where they are." Her voice sounded calm, but her hands were tight at her sides. The daughter hesitated. "Maybe they landed safely," she said. "Maybe they met someone kind." The Queen turned to her sharply, surprised by the words. "Someone kind?" she repeated. "You forget who we are dealing with. Humans are not like us." The young woman looked down. "Perhaps not, but that does not mean they are cruel." The Queen's heart ached, though she did not show it. She wanted to believe her daughter's hope, but fear built stronger walls than belief. Later that day, one of the ship's engineers brought new information. "My Queen," he said carefully, "we found a trace of energy, very faint, near a small area on the surface. It may have come from their vessel." The Queen's eyes brightened for the first time in days. "Show me." A map appeared before her, showing a quiet valley with a river winding through fields of gold. There were no cities, no weapons, no signs of danger, just nature and a few scattered homes. The signal seemed to come from one of them, a small wooden structure with a roof and a chimney. The Queen frowned. "A human dwelling?" "Yes, my Queen," the engineer said, "but it looks abandoned. Only one human life form appears within the area." She stared at the image. Her mind raced. If there was only one, then maybe her daughters had sought help. Maybe they had found shelter. But her pride refused to say that thought aloud. Instead, she said, "Prepare my transport. I will go myself." Her council objected at once. They said it was unsafe, that she should not leave the ship. But the Queen's decision was final. No one could stop a mother who needed to find her children. When the transport vessel left the mothership, the stars slipped away behind her. Clouds wrapped around the craft as it entered the atmosphere, glowing softly against the glass. The Queen had been to many worlds, but Earth's air felt different. It carried warmth. She looked through the window and saw forests, rivers, and sunlight spreading over fields. It was not what she expected from a world she had called dangerous. Her ship landed quietly in a wide field. Birds flew from the grass as the door opened. The air smelled of soil and rain. For a moment, the Queen just stood there, breathing deeply. It had been many years since she had felt natural air on her skin. She began to walk toward the small house shown on the map. The ground was soft beneath her feet. The place was calm, almost too calm, and she could hear only the wind moving through the trees. A narrow path led her to the front porch. There were flowers near the door, growing wild but alive. She paused and looked around carefully. Everything looked simple and untouched by fear. The Queen stepped closer. The house was quiet, but thin smoke rose from the chimney. That meant someone was inside. She listened. Faint sounds came from within, a rhythm like breathing and maybe the softest whisper of laughter. Her heart began to beat faster. She pushed open the wooden door slowly. It creaked and warm light spilled out. The smell of cooked food filled the air, gentle, clean, and strangely comforting. The Queen moved through the narrow hallway, following the sound that pulled her forward. When she reached the small room at the back, she stopped completely. Her breath caught in her throat. There, on a low bed, lay her two daughters, safe, asleep, their faces peaceful. They were covered with a blanket, their hands resting on each other. Beside them, seated in a chair, was a human man. His eyes were closed and his hand rested on the edge of the bed as if he had been watching over them. The Queen could not move for a long time. Her mind was full of questions, but her heart was too full of relief to think. Her daughters were alive. They were safe. And they were not afraid. She stepped closer and the man's eyes opened. He did not seem surprised. He looked at her with quiet calm, not fear, not anger. He spoke softly. "You must be their mother." The Queen stared at him. His words were simple, his tone without any threat. "They came here 2 nights ago," he continued. "They were lost, tired, and cold. I gave them food and a place to rest." The Queen wanted to speak, but her voice would not come. She looked around the room again. Everything was clean and gentle. There were toys on the floor, not theirs but old ones. Maybe from his past. A picture on the wall showed a family smiling. The man stood up slowly. "I mean no harm," he said. "I just couldn't leave them outside in the cold." The Queen's heart felt strange. She had expected lies or danger. But there was only honesty in his voice. She looked at her daughters again. They were smiling even in their sleep. She touched one of their cheeks gently, and the warmth brought tears to her eyes. She turned back to the man. "Why would you help them?" she asked quietly. He gave a small, sad smile. "Because once someone helped me too." His answer stayed in her mind like light through glass. The Queen lowered her head slightly, not out of weakness but in quiet understanding. As the night deepened outside, she sat beside the bed and watched her daughters breathe. The human placed another piece of wood into the fire, keeping the room warm. The soft crackle filled the silence between them. For the first time, she felt no anger toward humanity, only questions and a deep, wordless gratitude. When dawn began to rise, the Queen looked out the window. Golden light touched the fields and mist floated above the river. It was beautiful, almost unreal. Her daughters still slept peacefully, unaware that their small act of wandering had changed everything. The Queen knew she could not go back the same way she had come. Something had shifted inside her. The war she had promised no longer felt right. The sound of her daughter's calm breathing and the kindness of a stranger had broken through the walls she had built for years. Outside, birds began to sing. The Queen stood there in the quiet room, her eyes soft. She had come searching for her daughters, but she had also found something she had lost long ago: trust. Morning came quietly. The sun rose over the hills, painting the sky with soft gold. Inside the small farmhouse, the Queen stood near the window, watching the light touch the fields. Her heart felt lighter than it had in many years. Behind her, her daughters still slept, curled up under the blanket. The human man moved quietly around the kitchen, trying not to wake them. The Queen turned as she heard the sound of dishes. The man was making breakfast, simple food, but the smell filled the house with warmth. He noticed her watching and gave a shy smile. "I hope they like this," he said. "They haven't eaten much since they arrived." The Queen nodded slowly. "They were always curious," she said softly. "They love to explore." The man placed some bread on the table. "Curiosity is a good thing," he replied. It helps you see the world with open eyes. The queen looked at him for a moment, surprised by his calmness. You speak as if you have no fear, she said. He smiled again, though it carried a little sadness. I was afraid once, he said. But fear makes life smaller. I try to choose peace instead. His words were simple, but they touched something deep in her. For so long she had led through fear. Fear of loss, fear of betrayal, fear of what humans could do. But this man spoke as if peace was something a person could choose, not something that needed to be won. Her daughters began to stir. When they saw their mother, their eyes lit up. Mother! They cried softly, running to her. She knelt and gathered them into her arms, holding them close. Tears filled her eyes, but they were not from sadness. They were from relief. We are sorry, one of them said. We did not mean to make you worry. We wanted to see the sky up close. Then the storm came, and our vessel stopped working. The queen brushed a hand over her child's hair. You are safe now, she whispered. That is all that matters. The man quietly placed 2 cups of warm drink before them. They can stay as long as they need, he said. It's peaceful here. The queen looked around. The house was small, built of wood and stone with things clearly made by hand. There was kindness in every detail. The neat shelves, the clean floors, the flowers on the window ledge. Nothing about this place felt like the world her soldiers had described. Her daughters began to eat, smiling shyly at the man. He laughed softly when one of them asked about the strange taste of honey. It comes from bees, he explained, pointing to the garden. They work together to make it. The queen listened silently, watching how easily her children accepted his words. It was strange. Her daughters had been taught that humans were dangerous, yet here they sat beside one, laughing over breakfast. After the meal, the man offered to show them the fields. The queen hesitated but followed. Outside, the air was fresh and the morning breeze moved through the wheat like a quiet sea. The sky stretched wide, bright and endless. This land belonged to my family, the man said. It's not much, but it's home. The queen walked slowly beside him. You live here alone? She asked. He nodded. Yes, my parents are gone and my wife. She passed away a few years ago. The queen's eyes softened. You must feel lonely. Sometimes, he said. But I find peace in caring for this place. It reminds me of what matters. They walked in silence for a while. The queen noticed small details she had never seen before. A bird building a nest, the smell of grass, the sound of the river nearby. On her great ship, everything was metal and light. Here, everything was alive. Her daughters ran ahead, laughing as they chased butterflies. Their joy filled the air like music. The queen smiled faintly. They have not laughed like this in a long time, she said. The man nodded. Children laugh when they feel safe, he said. It's a good sound. The queen looked at him, wondering how a human who had lost so much could still speak with such calm. His kindness puzzled her. You knew who they were, she said quietly. You must have known they were not human. I knew, he answered simply. But it didn't matter. They needed help. Her eyes met his, and for a long moment neither spoke. There was no fear, no wall, only understanding. That evening, as the sun began to set, the queen sat on the porch of the farmhouse while her daughters played in the grass. The sky turned shades of orange and pink. The man brought her a small lamp and placed it beside her. The nights get dark here, he said. The queen thanked him. Her voice was gentle now, no longer cold or distant. Your world, she said slowly, is not what I imagined. He looked toward the horizon. Maybe our worlds are not so different, he said. We both have fear. We both have hope. We both protect what we love. She thought about his words long after he went inside. In her heart, she felt a quiet change. She remembered all the meetings, the speeches, the plans for defense. None of it felt right anymore. She realized how many years she had spent preparing for enemies she did not understand. Her daughters came to her side, tired from play. They leaned against her arms and closed their eyes. She held them close, listening to their soft breaths. The night sky above was filled with stars, the same stars she had seen from her ship, but somehow they looked different from here. Closer. Kinder. The human man came out again, holding a blanket. It gets cool at night, he said, placing it over them. Sleep well. The queen looked up at him, her eyes warm. You have shown more kindness than I can repay, he smiled. Kindness doesn't need payment. It just needs to be shared, his words echoed in her mind. When he went back inside, she looked down at her sleeping daughters. Their small hands rested on the blanket, their faces peaceful under the starlight. For the first time in her life, the queen felt no anger toward Earth. She only felt gratitude for this quiet place, for the gentle man, and for the chance to see humanity through a different light. As the night grew deeper, she whispered softly to herself, "Maybe peace begins like this, not with speeches or power, but with understanding." The wind moved through the fields, carrying her words away into the dark. Somewhere in the distance, the river flowed like a song. The queen closed her eyes and listened, feeling the truth settle in her heart. That night, the queen of 1,000 worlds sat in a human's field, with her daughters sleeping beside her. No throne, no guards, no crown, only the stillness of the earth and the sound of a kind man's home glowing softly in the dark. And though she did not yet know it, this quiet night would become the beginning of a new chapter for both her people and the humans below. A story not of war, but of gentle discovery, of small acts that would one day change everything. The morning light touched the fields again, and soft rays of sun slipped through the window. The queen woke slowly, her daughters still asleep beside her. For a few moments, she simply watched them. Their faces were calm, their hands warm against her own. It was strange, she thought. She had seen countless suns rise over many worlds, but this one felt special. This one felt alive. The small farmhouse was quiet except for the sound of the fire. The human was already awake, working in the garden outside. The queen watched him through the window. His movements were simple, steady, and full of purpose. He was not a soldier or a ruler. Yet, in his quiet way, he seemed to hold more strength than she had ever understood. Her daughters stirred, opening their eyes with sleepy smiles. "Mother," one whispered, "will we go home today?" The queen paused before answering. "Soon," she said softly. "But not yet." The girls nodded, trusting her without question. Their faith warmed her heart. When they came outside, the air smelled of fresh grass and flowers. The human turned and greeted them with his calm smile. "Good morning," he said. "I made breakfast." The queen and her daughters sat with him near the porch. The food was simple, bread, fruit, and warm milk, yet somehow it felt like a feast. As they ate, the queen noticed how her daughters listened to every story the man told. He spoke of his childhood, of how he once dreamed of the stars. He said he used to look up at the night sky and wonder if anyone was out there looking back. The queen felt her heart tighten. For so many years, she had seen humanity only through reports and numbers, never as living beings who dreamed. After breakfast, the man showed them around his land. The queen walked slowly behind him, her long robe brushing the grass. He showed her the river where he drew water and the old bridge he had repaired with his own hands. She noticed how he spoke with respect about every part of the land. The soil, the trees, even the stones. "You care for this world," she said quietly. He nodded. "It's all we have. If we don't care for it, we lose ourselves too." The queen looked toward the horizon where the sky met the hills. His words stayed in her mind. She remembered all the times she had spoken of Earth as a threat, something dangerous that must be controlled. Yet here stood a human who saw his planet as something sacred, something worth loving. Her daughters ran ahead, their laughter filling the air. They stopped near the riverbank, watching fish swim beneath the clear water. The queen joined them, kneeling beside the shore. The reflection of her face in the water seemed softer now, less like a ruler and more like a mother. "Mother," one of her daughters said, "I like this place. The people here are kind." The queen smiled faintly. "Yes," she said, "some are." She looked across the field at the man who was repairing a small fence. She felt a quiet respect for him, for his patience, for his kindness, for his way of seeing life not as a battle but as a garden to tend. As the day went on, clouds gathered in the sky. A light rain began to fall and they all went back inside. The man placed dry clothes near the fire for them. He offered tea and sat by the window watching the rain with them. The queen felt at peace. The sound of the rain, the warmth of the fire, and the laughter of her daughters made the world seem gentler. When the rain stopped, the air outside was cool and fresh. The queen stepped onto the porch and looked up at the clouds moving away. She closed her eyes and thought of her fleet waiting high above in the sky. Her generals were likely worried, sending messages she had not answered. She knew they would ask what she had found. What would she tell them? That the humans she feared were capable of care? That a single act of kindness had undone the walls of anger she had built for years? She felt torn between duty and heart. She was a ruler, and rulers did not change their minds easily. But standing there, surrounded by peace, she began to see that real strength came not from control, but from understanding. Later, when her daughters were asleep again, the queen sat at the table with the human. The fire glowed softly between them. She spoke quietly. "You helped my children without knowing who they were. You could have ignored them, yet you didn't. Why?" He looked into the fire before answering. "Because no one deserves to be alone," he said. "I once was, and I know how it feels. When I found them, they reminded me of hope." The queen listened in silence. His words touched something deep within her, a place that had been closed for too long. "Do your people not fear us?" she asked. He shook his head slowly. "Maybe some do. But fear fades when you choose to see with kindness. We learn more from helping than from fighting." The queen looked at him, studying his face. There was no anger, no pride, only calm truth. She felt a quiet realization forming in her heart. Her world had always believed that peace came after strength. But maybe peace was strength itself. That night she walked outside once more. The stars were bright, the air cool. She could see her great ship faintly among the distant clouds. It seemed so far away, not just in distance, but in meaning. She took a small communicator from her robe. It glowed softly in her hand. For a long time she said nothing. Then finally she spoke. "This is your queen," she said quietly. "No one is to move toward the planet. Maintain orbit and wait for my command. No harm is to come to Earth." Her voice was steady, calm. When she ended the transmission, she felt something inside her shift, like a storm finally passing. She turned her gaze back to the farmhouse. Through the window, she saw the man placing another log in the fire, and her daughter sleeping peacefully beside it. A simple home, a simple heart. Yet in that quiet place, she had found what her people's greatest weapons could never bring: peace. She whispered softly into the wind. "Perhaps we were never meant to rule over others. Perhaps we were meant to learn." The night carried her words across the fields, and the stars seemed to shine brighter in answer. The queen stayed awake until dawn, sitting by the window, thinking of all that had happened. She knew her decision would change everything. Her people might not understand at first, but they would in time. She had seen the truth with her own eyes, a truth that no report or strategy could ever teach. As morning came again, she smiled faintly. Her heart was lighter, her path clearer. The queen who had once declared war had now discovered something far greater: the power of quiet kindness. And though she still wore the title of queen, that morning she felt something even deeper. She felt human. The sun rose again, soft and golden across the fields. The queen stood by the doorway of the small farmhouse, her robe moving gently with the morning breeze. The world around her was quiet, peaceful, full of simple beauty. For the first time in many years, her heart felt light. Her daughters were safe, and her anger was gone. Inside, the man was preparing breakfast as usual. The smell of bread and fruit filled the house. The queen watched him for a moment, then smiled softly. He looked up and smiled back. "Good morning," he said. "Good morning," she replied. Her voice carried warmth now. Not the cold tone of a ruler, but the calm voice of someone at peace. Her daughters entered the room, still sleepy, rubbing their eyes. They sat at the table beside the man and began to eat. Their laughter filled the room. The queen sat quietly watching them. It felt like home, not the grand halls of her palace, but a place where hearts could rest. After breakfast, she walked outside and looked toward the sky. Her great ship was hidden beyond the clouds, waiting for her command. She knew she could not stay forever. Her people would be expecting her return. Yet she did not feel fear. She felt ready. The man joined her on the porch. "You're thinking of leaving," he said gently. She nodded. "Yes, my people need me, but they need truth more than my power." He was silent for a while, then said, "Sometimes truth is harder than war." The queen looked at him with soft eyes. "You are right," she said. "But it is worth it." She looked back toward her daughters. They were sitting under a tree, weaving flowers into crowns and placing them on each other's heads. Their laughter rose in the air like music. The queen took a slow breath. "They have seen more peace here in 2 days than they ever saw among the stars." The man nodded. "Maybe that is what your world needs, To see what peace looks like. The Queen smiled faintly. Perhaps that is why fate brought us here. When the sun reached its highest point, the Queen knew it was time. Her daughters ran to her, holding their flower crowns. "Mother, can we stay a little longer?" one of them asked. The Queen knelt down and hugged them both. "We will carry this place in our hearts," she said. "Even when we leave, it will stay with us." The man stood quietly, watching them. The Queen turned to him. "You gave me something I did not know I had lost," she said softly. "What's that?" he asked. "Faith," she said. "Faith in others. Faith in kindness," he lowered his eyes modestly. "All I did was offer warmth." "Sometimes," she said gently. "That is all the universe needs." They shared a quiet moment. The Queen reached into her robe and removed a small crystal, glowing faintly. "Take this," she said, placing it in his hand. "It will shine when peace is near. Let it remind you that your kindness changed more than you can imagine." He looked at it, speechless. "I will keep it safe," he said finally. The Queen smiled. "I know you will." Her daughters hugged him one last time, their small hands clinging to his. "Thank you," they whispered. He smiled and nodded. "You'll always have a friend here." The Queen called her small vessel from the sky. It appeared silently, gliding down with a soft hum. The air shimmered around it, and the wheat swayed gently in the wind. The daughters climbed aboard, waving as they went. The Queen paused at the door and looked back one final time. The man stood by the field, the sunlight shining behind him. The small farmhouse looked warm and peaceful. She raised her hand slightly, not as a ruler, but as a mother and a friend. Then she entered the vessel, and it rose quietly into the blue sky. As they ascended, her daughters pressed their faces to the window, watching the world grow smaller below. "Mother," one asked softly, "will we ever come back?" The Queen smiled. "One day," she said, "when our hearts need reminding of what goodness looks like." The ship broke through the clouds, and soon the stars surrounded them again. The Queen sat in silence for a while, her thoughts full of the earth, the man, and the peace she had found there. When they reached the great mothership, the corridors were filled with whispers. Her people bowed as she passed, unsure what to expect. She walked straight to the command hall, her daughters following behind her. Her generals were waiting. "My Queen," one said quickly, "we were ready for your order." "The fleet stands prepared. Shall we proceed with—" She raised her hand gently, stopping him. Her voice was calm, but every word carried power. "There will be no war," she said. "There will be no attack. Stand down every vessel." The hall fell silent. No one spoke. The words hung in the air like light breaking through darkness. "My Queen," another officer said carefully, "may we ask why?" The Queen looked around the hall, meeting every eye. "Because I was wrong," she said simply. "I have seen what humanity truly is. Not perfect, not flawless, but capable of love and kindness. I saw my daughters sleeping peacefully in the care of a human who had nothing to gain by helping them. I saw a world still learning, still growing, but full of hope. I cannot call such a world my enemy." Her words spread through the room like quiet thunder. No one dared move. Some looked confused. Others looked moved. The Queen continued, her voice steady. "We will not be destroyers," she said. "We will be learners. We will seek to understand, not to conquer. If there is to be strength, let it be the strength to forgive and to build." Her daughters stood proudly beside her, their small hands holding hers. The hall, once heavy with fear, now filled with something different: respect. One of the oldest council members stepped forward. "Your Majesty," he said softly, "you have seen what many of us have not. Perhaps peace is our true path." The Queen nodded. "It is." Later, she stood once again by the great viewing window, the same place where her story had begun. The earth turned slowly below, its blue light filling the chamber. She smiled faintly. Her oldest daughter came to her side. "Mother," she said, "do you think he will remember us?" The Queen's eyes softened. "He will," she said, "and so will we." Down on earth, the man stood by the field watching the sky. He held the small glowing crystal in his hand. As the Queen's ship faded among the stars, the crystal shimmered gently, lighting his palm with silver light. He smiled and whispered, "Safe journey, my friends." Far above, the Queen looked down one last time. In that moment, the stars seemed closer, the universe kinder. She whispered softly, "Peace begins in small places, like a home, a heart, or a field under the morning sun." Her ship turned toward the stars, carrying her people toward a new beginning, one built not on power but on understanding. And in the quiet of space, where once there had been thoughts of war, there was now only the sound of hope.